The Secrets of Doctor Who is brought to you by the Star Quest Production Network and is made possible by our many generous patrons. If you'd like to support the podcast, please visit sqpn.com/give. You're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, episode 236.
One day, I shall come back.
That's it. I've been renewed.
Is when a Time Lord's body wears out, he regenerates.
I'm a Time Lord. I'm not a human being. I walk in eternity.
Braveheart.
Change, my dear, and it seems on a moment too soon.
Unlimited rice pudding.
Physician healers. Wearing a bit thin. Fantastic.
I am Scottish. I can complain about things.
Ta-da! Ooh. Should be fine.
Hi, I'm Dom Bettinelli, and you're listening to The Secrets of Doctor Who, where we discuss everything about the hit BBC series, Doctor Who, and today we're discussing the 11th Doctor story, Asylum of the Daleks. Joining me today on the panel are Jimmy Akin. Hi, Jimmy.
Howdy, Dom.
And Father Cory Sticha. Hi, Father Cory.
How's it going?
Could be better. Technical issues, folks. Don't worry. Folks, please, we would ask you very humbly, please go to Apple Podcasts and write a review of the podcast for us. It really, really helps us a lot when you do that. It's one of the best ways of helping us as we try to grow the audience for the show and reach more folks. So write a review and then share the podcast with your friends. Help us grow this great community that we have and reach more people. So we are talking about the Asylum of the Daleks. This is the first episode of the 7th new season. Jimmy, can you give us a quick rundown of this episode?
I can, but I have something I wanted to tie up about last week's episode first.
Sure, go ahead.
So last week we reviewed The Brain of Morbius, and immediately after we got done talking about it, I was thinking about it, and it's like, okay, Morbius is a Time Lord who has undergone physical modification in order to hide from the people who want to take his life. And while he's in hiding, he is guarded by a companion who knows the truth about him and who ultimately restores him to functionality. We've heard that before.
Yeah.
We've heard that several times before. And most notably, we heard that in the David Tennant 10th Doctor two-parter, Family of Blood and whatever the other part was called.
Right.
And where the 10th Doctor had undergone biological revision to be fully human by a changeling arc, and Martha Jones was the one who knew the truth and guarded him in hiding for his life and restored him to full functionality. So here we have Solon doing that with Morbius. So Solon is essentially Martha Jones.
There we go.
Or, since this predates, Martha Jones was essentially Solon.
Yeah, it's all timey-wimey.
It's all very timey-wimey.
Martha Jones is a much better looking and not quite as insane Solon.
Yeah, much
right.
less evil.
Yes.
So in Asylum of the Daleks kidnap the Doctor, Amy, Rory, and the TARDIS and bring them aboard a spacecraft orbiting a mysterious planet known as the Asylum of the Daleks. This is where all of the insane, damaged Daleks are confined, and it's protected by a force field. The Daleks have decided that they want to destroy the planet, but they need the force field taken down, so they send the Doctor and companions to the source of some mysterious transmissions coming from the planet. The transmissions are being sent by a young woman named Oswin Oswald, who crashed on a spaceship there a century ago and has been using her genius-level hacking skills to fend off the Daleks that are down on the planet. Oswin Oswald bears an uncanny resemblance to the future companion Clara Oswald, so this is Clara's first real appearance. When the Doctor and companions get to the planet, they must find their way to Oswin, rescue her, and shut down the force field so the Daleks can destroy the planet. Ultimately, it is revealed that Oswin is no longer human. After she crashed, she was converted fully into a Dalek, but her genius mind has let her continue the fantasy that she's still human. She does bring down the force field. The Daleks start destroying the planet with Oswin still on it, and the Doctor and companions teleport up inside the TARDIS, which is aboard the Dalek spaceship. 2 other notes about this episode. At one point, in order to save the Doctor, Oswin wipes the Dalek database of all information about the Doctor, so they no longer know who he is. None of them anywhere in the Dalek Empire. This completes the arc from the previous season finale of, I've gotten too big, I need to step back into the shadows. And so he's done that now via Oswin. Also, there's a subplot about Amy and Rory getting divorced, but the sacrifices they've made for each other end up with them being back together by the end of the episode, so that really doesn't have any lingering consequences.
That's a good summary.
It's I kind of comment on that issue of erasing the Doctor, and that's something that Stephen Moffat, that's a well he went to a couple of times. Of course, the end of last season, he kills the Doctor, quote unquote, and the Doctor goes into hiding, sort of. Then you got this where he erases the Doctor from the Dalek's memory, and then in the 12th Doctor season, he erases Clara from the Doctor's memory.
Right.
So that's as well he goes back to time and time again. He likes to use this, which is kind of interesting for someone who was kind of a super fan of Doctor Who to want to erase the past of Doctor Who at certain points.
Well, I think it was actually a good move because, I remember in classic Doctor Who, the Doctor was not this famous godlike being that everybody knew. He could not, like in Silence of the Library, walk in and say, "We're in a library, look me up," and have that be the resolution. I understand over the course of a 50-year series, as you build up the hero does get big. And in recent years, he's gotten really big. He's been called a god. He's been Space Jesus. He's strutting around being egotistical, and that's actually his plan.
Yeah.
And that's an unhappy side of the Doctor, and I found myself wishing, why can't we go back to the way it was, where he was just a mysterious traveler? And this is Moffat doing that, and I actually approve of that.
No, I do agree too. It's this, and I think we see that coming up in this season of Matt Smith's era, where he is much mellower, at least much more low key is probably a better way to put it.
Smaller.
Not mellower,
Yeah,
smaller. He's not quite. He's not the oncoming storm. All these other phrases that he would throw out there,
which he brings up in this one. You mentioned that.
And the Daleks are like, what? The oncoming what?
The who?
Doctor Who?
Doctor Who. That's how we end this episode. Making them forget the Doctor does present a bit of a problem, given that he's a time traveler. Like in the past, he's crossing his timeline over and over again, going the past, the present, the future, over and over again. So there would have to be some times then, when do they forget him? In the past, the present, the future? It's a little bit of logical trouble.
Yeah, and they don't really tell us when this story occurs, although it's apparently in our future, because humans have spaceships that are going to other planets and solar systems, which is how Oswin gets there. But as long as the Doctor continues to encounter the Daleks after the forgetting point, they shouldn't know who he is, at least for a while, because the Daleks are also time travelers, and eventually they'll cross their timelines and learn about him from earlier Daleks who did know about the Doctor.
Right.
But at least this buys us some narrative space to have some encounters that aren't just the Doctor being immediately known by everybody, including the Daleks.
And eventually they do kind of play that out of, there's this Doctor-sized hole in the history of the Daleks that they eventually fill in.
Right. And we see
that takes a while, but they do eventually kind of answer that question.
In fact, I think we kind of see that with the 13th Doctor, too, with the Cybermen. Doesn't that come up in the most recent season that we talked about?
I can't remember for that one, but
I don't know. I don't care about that season.
Obviously made a huge impression on me because I don't remember either. Well, and that's the problem with you've got a time traveler who goes in time and space, and yet you want to have a very linear sort of narrative of the characters going forward. So it's something you got to just deal with and put a pin in it and move on, I guess. The one thing to point out is this is Moffat's, and I was surprised by seeing this. This was Stephen Moffat's first major Dalek script. Like, he hadn't really done Daleks before this point, which is quite a ways into his tenure as as showrunner in order to get the first Dalek script, right? I mean, that although Chibnall was the same way, he waited a whole season to do his first Dalek script too, I guess. So,
well, the Daleks, in the way they're standardly presented at this point, are boring.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
you know, I mean, they're iconic but boring because you know what they're going to do. So if you're the showrunner and you're building a season arc, you're not going to build it around the boring but iconic villains. You're going to build it around something new and interesting. And so as the showrunner, you're going to write those episodes, and you're going to let the obligatory Dalek stuff be written by lesser writers.
Right.
And this does kind of an interesting way to take the Daleks, where you got the insane ones, the Asylum. It does kind of change them up a little bit.
Yeah.
Now, I should say, I don't think the Daleks are intrinsically boring. I think they've shown periodically that they can do episodes about the Daleks that are really interesting and that don't all fit the same mold. But most of the time when we see the Daleks, it's the same thing. It's just exterminate, and yeah, seen that, got the T-shirt.
Yeah. Well, speaking of the Daleks, it is interesting to see the beginning of this episode. They go to Skaro, which is evidently devastated since the last time we've seen it. And they meet, and he meets this woman inside this big statue of a Dalek.
Well, and that's a callback to the Seventh Doctor, Remembrance of the Daleks. And that's the first time we've heard about that, where he has the Hand of Omega destroy Skaro.
Right.
Yeah, which then gets retconned because you can't actually destroy the Daleks forever. So they somehow got brought back for the Time War.
Yep.
and now we're going back to their original planet here.
Well, and it's the and they're also kind of retconning it of the planet wasn't blown up. It was just all civilization on the planet was destroyed or.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
The woman is interesting. So the woman is hiring the Doctor to find her daughter, but she's really a Dalek agent, which is how the Doctor gets kidnapped.
Mm-hmm.
She's what back in the day would have been called a Dalek man.
Mm-hmm.
Because the Daleks, as far back as the first Doctor, could mind control humans. And they did it back then, through a headset that the Dalek men would wear. But now we have this thing where they have a Dalek eye stalk project out of their forehead, which makes no sense. And, I mean, why? They've already got eyes.
Right.
You know, why? And it's ugly, and it's meant to be body horror, but I just find it off-putting. I don't like the eyepiece forehead ones. I like the old Robo-Men, Dalek men. And I would have preferred to have her be one of those, but she's not. But she then, once she's revealed, she's talking to the Doctor on the spaceship after he's been kidnapped, and she does have a line that I like. He's asking her about her memories, and she says that her memories are suppressed whenever she needs to go under deep cover. They'll bring them back as part of her cover story and so forth. But normally she doesn't remember them. And the Doctor says, you have a daughter, because that was what she was originally hiring the Doctor for, was to find her daughter. And she turns to him in her non-deep cover form and says, I know, I've read my file.
Right.
Yeah.
It's like, ooh. Creepy.
you can tell that the whole eye stalk out of the forehead thing was just like, hey, we can do this now with computer graphics. Let's do it.
Right.
And it shows. Right. I mean, you can, of course, again, we're watching this, years after they filmed it, but the CG doesn't quite hold up as well as they thought it did back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I can forgive that, just like I can forgive the cardboard sets in the 1960s. Yep. I'm not here for to be impressed by the visual stuff.
Right.
Very true.
Speaking of not being impressed by visual stuff, when Amy and Rory are kidnapped, Amy is doing a modeling shoot.
Mm-hmm.
So she's in some house somewhere. She's on she's posing on a staircase in different poses. They're snapping pictures of her. She's making facial expressions. And she looks selfish, weird, and cold in her facial expressions. And this is something I've noticed about modern modeling. I went, I don't know, a couple of years ago, I had to go down to a shopping mall to go to the Apple store to get something repaired. And so I have to walk around for an hour while they repair it. And it's just another reminder of why I don't hang out in malls. But they have some huge fashion model faces on the side of a cosmetics, I think, place, maybe Clinique or something. But it was some kind of fashion-related store, and it had these huge model faces. And I'm looking at the faces on the outside wall, and I'm going, these women look so empty and unhappy.
Mm-hmm.
And this is supposed to be attractive. This is what they're selling.
Mm-hmm.
You know, to buy our cosmetics so you can look empty and unhappy. Really? But that's the way Amy looks here, and Rory hangs a lantern on it. He talks to her about pouting at the camera.
Right.
Yeah.
And it's like, yeah, that's what she was doing. She was looking pouty and unhappy.
Well, and I wonder if it was a conscious choice, too, with the issues going on with their divorce, where she was basically kicking him out, divorcing him. And I wonder if it was kind of a conscious choice with that as well. Because she changes that. She starts out with this very unhappy look, even when she's not in front of the camera. By the end, of course, they're smiling and kissing and happy.
Yeah. Well, it could be, but I think it's also indicative of the fashion industry.
Right.
I think Moffat was making a statement about the fashion industry there, as well as what's going on with their marriage.
Right. Yeah. She's like, you can't imagine. It's shocking to start this. Like, you can't imagine Amy and Rory. How could they possibly be split up? Like, this couple that we've spent a season watching them get together. And then what could possibly, and he waited for her for 2,000 years.
Well, we waited for a season for them to get married, and then we've waited a whole nother season, and they had River Song and everything, and now they're splitting up. Yeah.
So it's shocking to start this season with them split, and they've resolved that fairly quickly in this episode. And we get an explanation of what could cause it. And it's, as an explanation, it's not a bad one. Just, jumping ahead. The crux of the breakdown is that Amy was made infertile at Demon's Run when they forced her to give birth to River Song. And infertility is a cause of a lot of marriage breakdowns. That's a fact. And so and of course they didn't talk about it because it's Amy. Doesn't talk about it with Rory about her feelings about it. And that was the crux of the breakdown. And each of them misunderstood the other's feelings about this inability to have children. You always wanted kids and I can't give them to you, and all this other stuff. So I felt like that was, in the end, okay.
Ish. I mean, you have these dueling I love you more than you love me things.
Yeah.
I waited for you for 2,000 years outside a box. Well, I didn't kick you out. I gave you up. And I'm going, actually, I think the 2,000 years thing kind of trumps that.
It does.
Exactly.
Well, usually Rory trumps Amy in relationship stuff. He just does.
Yeah. But if you're going to have a here today, gone today divorce plot, that's an okay-ish reason for it.
Yeah. And it kind of, I feel like it kind of sets the stage for their departure, which is they're together, outside of their, they're cast out of their own lives, but they're together in the end in 1945 New York or whatever it was.
30s,
yes. I was remembering the unfilmed scene where their grandson shows up at Rory's dad's place. So we also get we have the Asylum planet. The ship that they're beamed up to is the Parliament of the Daleks, which is a new thing. And it apparently, if you look closely, this is what I was reading, and I saw some of it. You have Daleks from every era, like every kind of Dalek almost that we've seen on screen is there in various shots, which is kind of interesting.
In fact, they put out a call to fans who had models of Daleks they'd made themselves of the Daleks of different eras because they didn't have enough in stock and they didn't have the money to create them. So they said, "Hey, can we borrow all of your fan models for this?"
It's like Star Wars Rogue One, where they got all of the various astromechs and that showed up. Including a little Star Wars trivia. There was a little pink R2, which was made for this little girl who had cancer, and so she got it on screen, which is really cute.
Oh, that's cool.
Yeah.
I was also thinking there's an episode of Star Trek Enterprise. It's the Mirror Universe ones where they're on an old-style Constitution-class ship like the Enterprise, and they wanted the little viewer to come up out of the console where Sulu would sit out on the Enterprise. Yep. And rather than build that, they used one from a fan production.
Nice.
I think the set itself, or at least there was. I'm thinking the Scotty Next Generation episode. The set itself of the Constitution class was one of the fan made. There's one, and I think in New York State
upstate,
where they built a complete set.
Yeah,
of
the
New
so Voyages. Yeah.
So there's throughout all these series, there's different, where the fans have been pulled in, and that's cool that they're willing to do that, because some studios aren't willing to acknowledge any kind of fan involvement. CBS, excuse me.
CBS. Thank you, CBS. So we have the introduction of what will become the next new companion, and so they have this very interesting process that they're doing, where they're introducing the actress playing different characters, but showing up as what will eventually become a part of the arc, the Impossible Girl arc story.
And I like that in principle. I like having, in a way, this is kind of like River Song, where you've got someone from the Doctor's future who's showing up early. And, okay, that makes sense. A time traveler would have things like that happen to him, and on more than one occasion. And so having versions of Clara, because as we will eventually learn, there is not just one version of Clara,
right?
But having versions of Clara show up and help the Doctor out in given situations before she actually meets him. I mean, that is a creative, interesting way of introducing the character. I know fans are split on Clara. I mean, like, everybody loves Donna, but not everybody loves Clara. And some people think the Impossible Girl plot was mishandled, that they didn't like the way it was done. But in terms of the concept, I think it's a great concept.
Yeah,
the Doctor encounters versions of this mysterious person who die, and then, but they're somehow the same person. And he's encountering them over and over again. I mean, that's a nice mystery, and that's a nice, unprecedented way to introduce a companion.
Yeah. I liked Clara, and I think part of it had to do with this episode, because I liked Oswin. I thought she was spunky, she was smart. I thought she would have been a great companion for the Doctor. Like this version of her, the really smart hacky, the cleverness to her. I really enjoyed that, and I was hoping that this would follow through into the regular companion, Clara, who wasn't quite the same. Obviously, they wrote her a little differently, but I really liked this character, and I like she wasn't like Donna was kind of independent. Amy's independent, but they were a little more aggressively independent.
Yeah,
this Oswin felt more playful, friendly, but smart as a whip, and could be a real good foil for the Doctor. And I kind of wish that she could have stuck around in that form.
Right.
But I do like Clara. But yeah, I like this Oswin.
On balance, I like Clara too. I with anything, I'm not uncritical of it, but I personally like Clara. And in light of what we eventually learn about her, I don't like the way she ended.
Yes.
Right. But I like a lot of stuff that preceded that. In terms of what we eventually learn about her, the reason the Doctor is encountering these other versions of her is because in his future, the great intelligence will corrupt his personal timeline and cause things to go wrong at every stage of his life. And to save him from that, Clara Oswald jumps into his timeline and fractures, becoming the Impossible Girl, with many different versions of her showing up at key moments in his history to undo the damage that the great intelligence did. And so if you think about that, in some prime version that we never see of the Doctor's timeline, he goes to the Asylum of the Daleks and things are okay. But then in another version that we also don't see, he goes to the Asylum of the Daleks, but the great intelligence has corrupted it, so things go wrong for him here. And then in this third version of the Doctor's timeline, which we do see, Clara Oswald has put a manifestation of herself here to help the Doctor and keep it from going wrong.
Right. And when you think about it, it really is Missy who is the one who puts Clara in all of this in the first place. Because Missy's the one who gives Prime
Who
Clara,
nudges her to become the companion.
Yeah, she gives her the phone number that for the Doctor's TARDIS for her to call for tech support, which we'll see eventually. So very interesting.
The thing I didn't like about Clara, and I generally like the character, at least kind of from the start, was they kind of made her a little too doctorish. She kind of eventually, she very quickly became not even, I wouldn't even call an equal to the Doctor. I mean, there were times where she was almost showing up the Doctor, I felt.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And it was different from Dr. Donna, where it was just, for 1-2-parter, and it was a very short thing and done.
And one really badly done scene.
Yeah. It was very different than where Clara, we're talking about, like earlier, talking about the Doctor getting a little too big for his britches. Well, this is kind of what happened to Clara at one point.
She got too big.
I actually, I'm okay with that in her case. Now, there have been companions that are more or less similar to the Doctor, and that even show him up. Zoe in the second Doctor's time was from the future and was a scientist, even though she was like 18, and understood things and could show up Patrick Troughton's Doctor sometimes, and that was okay. And then in the fourth Doctor's time, also we had I'm blanking on her name now.
Romana?
I'm third Doctor.
The third Doctor's
Liz
first
Grant?
companion, Liz. Yeah,
Liz. Okay.
Liz also could kind of go toe to toe with the Doctor, Liz Shaw. Then in the fourth Doctor's time, we had Romana, who's a time lady and could do some things better than the Doctor.
And Romana was awesome.
and those were successful companions. And then in New Who, we also had the Doctor training Ace to become a time lady.
Yeah.
But then in New Who, we have Amy. Well, Donna, started to have Doctor-like aspirations, and then Amy did the same thing over the course of her arc. I mean, by the end of it, she's using the sonic screwdriver to accomplish stuff, and I mean, we're going to see that in the next episode we do. She has become much more Doctor-like. And so I think having a character where they do have aspirations of becoming like the Doctor, but it's their undoing. Is a nice plot to explore. And they do that with Clara, where she becomes very Doctor-like, but then she becomes addicted to this adventuring and to being like the Doctor.
Right.
And that's what leads her to her downfall.
Right.
The problem I have is they then walk back her downfall.
Yep.
But having this hubris, leading to the fall of a character who's human and trying to be too much like a Time Lord and who's addicted to this adventuring, that's an interesting thing to explore.
Yep. Yeah. Yeah. I agree. With all that. I was trying to think of anything to add, but there isn't anything for me to add to that. So there's a great moment. It's sort of an Amy Clara moment. I'm sorry. Before we get to that, there's actually I want to talk about on the Parliament of the Daleks, because it was something I'd mentioned before, where the Doctor says, I thought you'd run out of ways to make me sick. You think hatred is beautiful. And the Daleks say, perhaps that's why we've never been able to kill you. And the implication being they see the Doctor's hatred of them as too beautiful to destroy. And wow, that is, I love how, I think especially Moffat shows the Doctor's hatred of the Daleks as a character flaw. Like,
yeah, it's once again in New Who, more thematics, suggesting that the Doctor is more like the Daleks than he really wants to admit.
Right. Yeah, I mean, because he's genocided them more than once over time. They just keep popping back up again. So,
which is still funny to think back to the Fourth Doctor and Genesis of the Daleks. Do I have the right to destroy them? That whole conversation, that famous speech.
Yeah,
a very different view of the Doctor and the Daleks at that point, where you could imagine if the 11th Doctor or 10th Doctor were put in that situation, they'd be like, okay, here we go, boom,
Yeah, and the 7th Doctor even, who uses the Hand of Omega. Yeah. Yep. So,
oh no, Davros, don't do that.
Right. The other line I wanted to talk about was when Oswin says, "Do you know how to make someone into a Dalek? Subtract love, add anger," and referring to Amy, who had lost her bracelet that was protecting her from the Dalek nanogenes riding her.
Mm-hmm.
She says, "Doesn't she seem a bit too angry to you?" And Amy says, "Somebody's never been to Scotland." That was awesome. That was bravo, Moffat. Bravo.
Yeah.
I like as Amy is being rewritten by these nanoprobes into becoming a hybrid Dalek. She's going to have one of the, if it's not stopped, she's going to have one of the eye stalks coming out of her forehead. But, which is, as we've said, stupid. But, or as I've said, stupid. I don't want to speak for other people.
I'll go with that.
There is a nice moment where she's talking to the doctor about how she's afraid and what's going to happen to her, and he's like, physical changes come later, but mental changes are already occurring.
Right.
And she says, how do you know mental changes are occurring? And he says, we've had this conversation 4 times now.
Right.
And she's just not remembering it.
Yeah.
And
Yes.
she says, "Doctor, I'm scared." And he says, "Good, hang on to scared. Scared isn't Dalek."
Yeah.
Yes.
And it's like, that's the only, it's anything that is not Dalek, hang on to that. And fear is not that.
Exactly.
And in the midst of stopping the Dalek, the insane Daleks from overrunning the universe, and because they scare even the regular Daleks, is the Doctor is trying to fix Amy and Rory as well. He's a multitasker, and Amy has lost her, like I said, lost her wristband, her Fitbit that keeps her from becoming a Dalek, and he's having this conversation where they focus on love, keep the Dalek conversion at bay by focusing on love. But he's already put his own nanogene, warding device on her. He's telling her to focus on love because he's trying to get her to remember her love for Rory, and that's the whole reason for that.
We should mention, so the Daleks, in order to enable, so the Asylum of the Daleks planet has a cloud of nanobots on it that will convert any visitors into Dalek men.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as the Doctor puts it, any invaders become part of on-site security. And so, okay, that makes sense from a Dalek perspective. But the Daleks need the Doctor, Amy, and Rory to not have that happen to them. So they give them these wristbands that have some kind of friend or foe system in them that says, "I'm a friend, do not convert me into a Dalek man."
Right.
And at one point, the Doctor and Amy are being attacked by Dalek men security. And apparently, even though and this is stupid, even though the friend or foe system will tell the bots not to convert you, it doesn't tell the Dalek men on-site security that you're a friend.
Right. That's
and
true.
So, yeah, so that's dumb. But as a result, the Dalek men security start attacking the Doctor and Amy, and one of them, without Amy realizing it, rips off her, he grabs her arm, and without her realizing it, he also rips off her bracelet, which is why she's in danger of being turned into a Dalek man.
Right.
And I have in my notes, Rory will give Amy his bracelet.
Yes.
Because if you've got this divorce plot going, that's the obvious thing to do. Have him self-sacrifice, and even if it's just temporarily, it'll buy her more time. And he does, and then it turns out the Doctor has already put his on her, and they're like, he probably doesn't even need it.
Yeah. It's and that is the most Rory thing to do. So that's in character.
At least they kind of flipped it on its head and said, "Oh, never mind, don't have to do it because the Doctor already did it." So they didn't quite go to that conclusion. But
one of the things I like is there's a little bit of subtle dialogue here that Moffat manages is when Rory is separated from the Doctor and Amy and wandering around amongst these really creepy, rusty, deactivated, crazy Daleks, and he bumps into one and it starts making noises, and it starts saying egg, 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 and Rory thinks it means those roundels that are on the lower carapace.
Dalek bumps.
Bumps.
Yep. Yeah, the bumps. And he's like, eggs? You mean these things? And it keeps going. It's egg, stir, min, aid. And that what it's trying to do is say exterminate. He's like, oh, I'm out of here. And he runs away.
Yep.
And later on, we've got...
mileage may vary on that.
Well, because later on, Oswin, throughout this, has been making souffles. And the Doctor's concern is the trigger for why he thinks there's something odd about Oswin is where she got the milk and eggs to make souffle over the past year. Although you could use powdered both, but
yeah, she's already said in one of her first scenes that her supplies are holding up well. So she's got all of the other people from her ship are dead. She's got, cruise ship level food stores here.
Yeah.
Right.
So it really is not a big mystery.
But the thing, the nice parallelism is when later on, when the doctor tells her that she's been converted to Dalek and her memory comes back, she says eggs. He's talking about where'd the eggs for the souffle come from? And she says eggs, exterminate. So they bring. I kind of like the little bit of parallelism there that he did.
I like the parallelism. I like the payoff. I think taken in isolation, the Rory scene, I'm kind of not as impressed by it.
Rory
goofy.
Was a little dumb for that. Yeah, he would have been smarter than that.
Another thing that I don't get about this episode is why the Daleks. I mean, why do they need the Doctor here? Because this planet has a force field. Don't you have? I mean, you've got magic bracelets that tell them the nanobots your friends. Don't you have a way to tell the force field thing that you're friends and turn it off from orbit? I mean, why isn't that working? And why do they play it the way they do? Because and I know why they do.
Yeah.
From a writing perspective, they bring the Doctor and Amy and Rory in front of the Parliament of the Daleks, and the Doctor is all like expecting a massive confrontation. I mean, he even expects to be killed. He says, "Okay, boys, it's Christmas. You got me," and he's expecting them to blast him. And then it's like, no, the Doctor will save the Daleks. The Doctor will save the Daleks. Why do they need saving? They don't have any. They're detecting opera transmissions from this planet. Okay, how does that translate into you're in mortal danger and need saving? Why? I don't understand why this is such a threat to them.
I think they said because the Starliner crashed into the planet through the force field. It's like it's destabilized the force field. If the Starliner could get through it from one direction, it means it's opened it up. They could possibly get out. Is what they say.
Yeah, they say something along that lines. Yeah, I mean, opera is deadly dangerous, so I mean, they're afraid of it. No,
it deals with, and I do like the fact they don't understand what opera is. That's fine, but I think that the writing was weak here in that I wasn't able to extract a clear explanation of why they need saving from a single viewing.
Right.
And I figured if I go back and watch it and carefully look at the dialogue, I might get something, but I think it went by too fast. You've got to account for those voices and how they are not human. And I mean, it's, how they're being processed electronically and make things clearer for the audience so they can get it.
Well, and I think they tried to do that with the woman who was the Dalek man, the Dalek operative, tried to use her as a voice to do that, and they didn't do that very well. Because that was my question is, well, if the concern is about sending someone down there, well, send one of the people that are already converted.
Right.
To do it.
Yeah. Yeah, there was something about like not sacrificing any Daleks. I think this is what they said. They're too scared to go, so they want and the Doctor has a reputation for always taking a Dalek, so may as well get the predator of the Daleks to go.
One thing that's very obvious if you've seen the episode before and you know the big reveal at the end that Oswin is a Dalek, it's really obvious on rewatch the way they're pounding on that theme before we get to the reveal.
Yeah.
Because almost every time, not necessarily every time, but many, many of the times, the Doctor is interacting with Oswald over the phone. It's like, how is this possible? Matt Smith keeps throwing up objections.
Right.
To point out something is wrong. And everyone else is dismissing it. And on your first watch, it's easy to dismiss it too, because we're seeing Oswin's self-image as a human being.
Right.
I mean, we're seeing her in this little space, and she's typing on keyboards, and she's taking souffles out of the oven, and we're seeing her, and so that's making a very powerful visual impression. And if they didn't have the Doctor constantly pounding on something is wrong here, then the reveal would come as too much of a surprise.
Right.
At the end. It would feel like, wait, what? you didn't do anything to set that up.
Mm-hmm.
Right.
And so they needed to set it up. Unfortunately, I don't think the setups are that great because she was an entertainment director on a cruise ship in space. Of course she has milk and eggs.
Right. but on the other hand, she's a junior entertainment director, I think it was the title. And she's a hacking genius? Because he keeps saying, how could you do that to Dalek technology? That's not possible.
Well, except she is a genius. Because right. I mean, that other objection also doesn't work because the Doctor admits at the end, yes, she is a genius. That's why they didn't turn her into a Dalek man and wipe her mind.
Right.
That's why they put her into a Dalek and did a full conversion.
Right. But I mean, it's a subtle distinction she might have been a genius, but did she have that knowledge to hack into the Dalek? Yeah, but
entertainment director with a hacker on the side. I mean,
yes, they had the hackathon on board. The hacker on the side. So
I mean, Mr. Robot worked in a security firm. And
that's true. Yeah, he did.
Hacker vigilante on the side.
So we get at the end, she has integrated her memories. She knows what she is now. She remembers having been converted, and she's going to save the Doctor, Amy, and Rory by lowering the force field and using the transmat to get them out just in time while sacrificing herself. And she gives him that line that we're going to hear again, "Run, you clever boy." And then they play the Clara's theme, which
and
for the
remember.
Right. Remember. And she does the Vulcan mind melt. Nope, sorry, that's the wrong one. And but then we get the Clara's theme for the first time, which becomes iconic throughout the rest of Clara's run through Doctor Who. And they transmat up inside the TARDIS, which is a clever little trick. And
it saves them from having a beam onto the bridge and then let's run into the TARDIS amid a Dalek firefight when the Daleks don't know who you are now.
Right, right. And that we end with all the Daleks saying over and over again, Doctor Who, and very little clever little say the name.
Because of course the Doctor has to show off. He has to then pop his head out the door and say, I can move. I can't fly the TARDIS, but I can at least get the transmat into the TARDIS.
Right. And then so that now they're forgotten. And that's how we end things there. And Amy and Rory are, like we said, back together again. The Doctor is now small again. The Daleks don't remember him. And that's how we end. So what do you think? Any other notes on this episode, Father Cory?
Father Cory?
Well, going back to the 7th Doctor episode, we have a special weapons Dalek, the big blaster Dalek that one of those show up, just kind of sits in the corner, doesn't do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And then I got a kick out of it. Nicholas Briggs, who has been the voice of the Daleks since New Who started, he actually gets to voice act instead of just scream, exterminate, exterminate, exterminate.
That's right. Yeah, he gets some lines. That's good. Jimmy?
Nicholas Briggs, incidentally, is also one of the key guys at Big Finish.
Yes, he is. Yeah. He was one of the key founders of that. Yep.
So for me, there's a nice scene where Amy is under the conversion process and she starts spacing out and hallucinating, and she's seeing all of these people, humans, in elegant dress. And they're like interacting. A couple of them are like slow dancing. There's a little ballerina girl, and they're in this kind of nostalgic 1940s, 50s dress, some of it formal. And then the Doctor snaps her out of this trance, and it's like, Amy, those are not people. And because she's like, these are just people. And she's like, no, they're not. Look at them again. And they're all Daleks.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And that's creepy. I also there's a scene before Oswin wipes the Dalek database of knowledge of the Doctor. There's a moment where the Doctor and Amy are on the run in this corridor, narrow corridor from a Dalek that's after them. And they don't have any weapons, and the Doctor needs to protect Amy and himself from this Dalek that's coming after them. And he turns to the Dalek and says, "Who am I?" And the Dalek searches its database and says, "You're the Predator," which is the new term they've introduced that the Daleks call the Doctor. Not just the oncoming storm, but the Predator of the Daleks. So he says, "You're the Predator. What are your orders regarding the Predator?" And it's like he has to be destroyed. But this Dalek doesn't have a functioning gun because it's old and decrepit. So what are you going to do? How are you going to carry out your orders without a gun? and the Dalek realizes self-destruct mode activated.
Yeah.
And it's going to blow itself up to destroy the Predator, and which is exactly what the Doctor wants. He wants this Dalek to blow itself up, and what he then does is use the sonic screwdriver to put it into reverse so it propels itself away to blow up the other Daleks.
Right.
So he does a Jim Kirk here where he convinces a robotic-like thing to destroy itself, to self-destruct, and turns it into a hand grenade to use against other Daleks.
Yeah.
That was good. Yes.
It's good to know that Daleks have transmissions that you can shift into reverse. That's a good thing to know.
Yes. All right. I think that should about do it for us for this time. So before we wrap things up, I do want to take a moment to thank our patrons who make it possible for us to create the Secrets of Doctor Who. Their generous donations at sqpn.com/give make it possible for us to continue the Secrets of Doctor Who and all the shows at StarQuest. You can join them by visiting sqpn.com/give. And we'd also like to thank Victor Lambs, who edits the show for us every week. That's it from us this time. So what do you think of the Asylum of the Daleks, this 11th Doctor story that brings us Jenna Coleman for the first time? You can let us know by commenting at sqpn.com or the Secrets of Doctor Who Facebook page, or send an email to drwho@sqpn.com. We'll be back next time when we'll be discussing the 5th Doctor story, Snake Dance. Until then...
Oh, Damara is back.
Until then, Father Cory Sticha, thank you for joining me and sharing the Secrets of Doctor Who.
Thank you, Dom.
And Jimmy Akin, thank you as well.
Thank you, Dom.
And I gotta make my souffle and stir the eggs. And once again, I'm Dom Bettinelli. Thank you for listening to the Secrets of Doctor Who on StarQuest. And remember, don't be fair to the Daleks when they're firing me at a planet.
Right. This is going to be fun.